Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is it is Wednesday of Holy Week. Tonight is that great service of Tenebrae, which normally we would go out and attend, and you have all those great lamentations and songs and the pounding of the books on the pews at the end of it all, and that singing of that great piece of music, Tenebrae facte sunt, dum crucifixis and Iesum Judei. But we're not doing that because we are still in quarantine. And Governor Walz has extended the quarantine for another 2 weeks, it seems. So we will be up until next month, still on quarantine. Now, I'm outside today simply because it's a lovely warm day, kind of cool, breezy, definitely. I think it's supposed to be snow tomorrow. But as you can see behind me, it's this beautiful blue sky, which is a lot more pleasant to look at than my ugly puss. So I'm out here. I've got a little fire going. And I've got a little bit of sustenance. It says Guinness, but don't let that fool you. This is not Guinness. It's actually a Radler. And if you don't know a Radler yet, it looks a little bit like a Weiss beer, but it's not. It's not made out of wheat. It's a regular beer, and it's mixed with fruit juice, citrus of some kind, lemon or grapefruit juice, and it's absolutely marvelous, especially after a long day working in the garden, which is what happened today. Did a lot of digging and planted some blueberry plants as well as some azalea. So we'll see how that all works. So we're outside today, and it's particularly breezy out, and so I'm using the microphone, the body mic, and hopefully that'll work well. So if you can't see my face immediately, cheer up. You can see the great outdoors while we read. Thought it'd be great to finish off Act 3 today if we can. And in order to do that, we need to read 2 acts, but it's all right, because Act 3, Scene 4, it's a little dinky act. It's a little exchange between Lord Capulet and Paris. And we get a little bit more about the character of Paris, and a little bit more about Lord Capulet. And then immediately it goes into Romeo and Juliet at Capulet's orchard. And this actually is intriguing to me because you have Lord Capulet in Scene 4 setting up the marriage for his daughter, thinking, oh, this will make her happy and be able to bring her back from the sorrow she feels after Tybalt's death. And while he is arranging this marriage, Romeo and Juliet are consummating their marriage in another room in the house, which, again, is sometimes glossed over by people that want to make this out to be a lovely romance. But it's a bit of a betrayal, I think, of Daddy and of Daddy's attempts to make Juliet happy. So let's go ahead and we'll read in our Shakespeare, and we'll read Act 3, Scene 4, and then we'll go right into Act 3, Scene 5, and be done with Act 3, and we can start up Act 4 and then 5 next we meet, hopefully tomorrow. So, here we go. Act 3, Scene 4. This is a room in Capulet's house. Enter Capulet, Lady Capulet, and Paris. Lord Capulet. Things have fallen out, sir, so unluckily, that we have had no time to move our daughter. Look you, she loved her kinsman Tybalt dearly, and so did I. Well, we were born to die. 'Tis very late. She'll not come down tonight, I promise you, but for your company I would have been abed an hour ago. Paris responds, These times of woe afford no time to woo. Madam, good night. Commend me to your daughter. Lady Capulet.
I will, and know her mind early tomorrow. Tonight she's mewed up to her heaviness.
Lord Capulet says, Sir Paris, I will make a desperate tender of my child's love. I think she will be ruled in all respects by me. Nay, more, I doubt it not. Wife, go you to her ere you go to bed. Acquaint her here of my son, Paris love, and bid her mark you me on Wednesday next. But soft, what day is this?
Monday, my lord, says Paris.
Monday? Well, Wednesday is too soon. Or Thursday let it be. Or Thursday tell her. She'll be married to this noble earl. Will you be ready? Do you like this haste? We'll keep no great ado. A friend or two. For hark you, Tybalt being slain so late, it may be thought we held him carelessly, being our kinsman, if we revel much. Therefore we'll have some half a dozen friends, and there an end. What say you to Thursday?
My lord, I would that Thursday were tomorrow, says Paris.
Well, get you gone. Our Thursday be it then. Go you to Juliet ere you go to bed. Prepare her, wife, against this wedding day. Farewell, my lord. Light to my chamber, ho, afar me. It is so very, very late. We may call it early, by and by. Good night.
Exeunt. Cut to a scene 5, Capulet's orchard. Enter Romeo and Juliet above, at the window.
Juliet begins.
Wilt thou be gone? It is not yet near day. It was the nightingale, not the lark, that pierced the fearful hollow of thine ear. Nightly she sings on yond pomegranate tree. Believe me, love, it was the nightingale.
Oh, it was the lark, the herald of the morn. No nightingale.
Look, love, what envious streaks do lace the severing clouds in yonder east. Night's candles are burnt out, and jocund day stands tiptoe on the misty mountain tops. I must be gone and live, or stay and die. Yonder light is not daylight, I know it. It is some meteor that the sun exhales, to be to thee this night a torch-bearer, and light thee on thy way to Mantua. Therefore stay yet, thou needst not be gone.
No, let me be ta'en, let me be put to death. I am content.
So thou wilt have it so. I'll say yon grey is not the morning's eye, it is but the pale reflex of Cynthia's brow. Nor that is not the lark, whose notes do beat the vaulty heaven so high above our heads. I have more care to stay than will to go. Come, death, and welcome. Juliet wills it so. How is my soul? Let's talk. It is not day. Oh, it is. It is. Hence, begone, away. It is the lark that sings so out of tune, straining harsh discords and unpleasing sharps. Some say the lark makes sweet division. This doth not so, for she divideth us. Some say the lark and loathed toad change eyes. Oh, now I would they had changed voices too. Since arm from arm that voice doth us affray, hunting thee hence with hunts up to the day. Oh, now be gone. More light and light it grows.
More light and light, more dark and dark our woes.
Enter a nurse to the chamber. Madam! Nurse? Your lady mother has come into your chamber. The day is broke. Be wary. Look about, she says, and exits. Then window, let day in, and let life out. Farewell. Farewell. One kiss, and I'll descend. Art thou gone so? My lord, my love, my friend. I must hear from thee every day in the hour, for in a minute there are many days. Oh, by this count I should be much in years, ere I can behold my Romeo. Farewell. I will omit no opportunity that may convey my greetings, love, to thee. Oh, think'st thou we shall ever meet again? I doubt it not, and all these woes shall serve for sweet discourses in our time to come. Oh, God, I have an ill-divining soul. Methinks I see thee. Now, thou art below, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. Either my eyesight fails, or thou lookst pale. And trust me, love, in my eyes so do you. Dry sorrow drinks our blood. Adieu, adieu. And he exits. Oh, fortune, fortune, all men call thee fickle. If thou art fickle, what dost thou with him that is renowned for faith? For fickle fortune. For then I hope thou wilt not keep him long, but send him back. Lady Capulet from within. Ho, daughter, are you up? Who is that calls? It's my lady mother. Is she not down so late, or up so early? What unaccustomed cause procures her hither? Enter Lady Capulet. Why, how now, Juliet? Madam, I am not well. Evermore weeping for your cousin's death. What, wilt thou wash him from his grave with tears? And if thou couldst not make him live. Therefore I've done. Some grief shows much of love, but much of grief shows still some want of wit. Yet let me weep for such a feeling loss, says Juliet. So shall you feel the loss, but not the friend which you weep for. Feeling so the loss, I cannot choose but ever weep the friend. Well, girl, thou weeps not so much for his death, as that the villain lives which slaughtered him. What villain, madam? That same villain, Romeo. Villain, and he be many miles asunder. God pardon him, I do with all my heart. And yet no man like he doth grieve my heart. That is because the traitor murderer lives. I, madam, from the reach of these my hands, would none but I might venge my cousin's death. We will have vengeance for it. Fear thou not. Then weep no more. I'll send one to Mantua, where that same banished runagate doth live. Shall give him such an unaccustomed dram that he shall soon keep Tybalt's company, and then, I hope, thou wilt be satisfied. Indeed, I never shall be satisfied with Romeo till I behold him. Dead, is my poor heart so for kinsman vexed. Madam, if you could find out but a man to bear a poison, I would temper it, that Romeo should, upon receipt thereof, soon sleep in quiet. Oh, how my heart abhors to hear him named, and cannot come to him, to wreak the love I bore my cousin upon his body that has slaughtered him. Find now the means. I'll find such a man. But now I'll tell thee joyful tidings, girl. Oh, and joy comes well in such a needy time. What are they, I beseech your ladyship? Well, thou hast a careful father, child, one who, to put thee from thy heaviness, has sorted out a sudden day of joy, that thou expectst not, nor I looked not for. Madam, in happy time, what day is that? Marry, my child, early next Thursday morn, the gallant young and noble gentleman, the County Paris, at St. Peter's Church, shall happily make thee there a joyful bride. Now by St. Peter's Church, and Peter too, he shall not make me there a joyful bride. I wonder at this haste, that I must wed ere he that should be husband comes to woo. I pray you tell my lord and father, madam, I will not marry yet, and when I do, I swear it shall be Romeo, whom you know I hate rather than Paris. These are news indeed. Here comes your father. Tell him so yourself, and see how he will take it at your hands. Enter Lord Capulet and the nurse.
When the sun sets, the air doth drizzle dew, but for the sunset of my brother's son it rains downright. How now a conduit go, what still in tears, evermore showering? In one little body thou counterfeitest a bark, a sea, a wind. For still thy eyes, which I may call the sea, do ebb and flow with tears. The bark of thy body is sailing in this salt flood, and the winds thy sighs, who raging with thy tears, and they with them, without a sudden calm will overset thy tempest-tossed body. How now, wife? Have you delivered to her our decree?
Aye, sir. But she will none. She gives you thanks. I would the fool were married to her grave.
Soft! Take me with you! Take me with you, wife! How? Will she none? Does she not give us thanks? Is she not proud? Does she not count her blessed, unworthy as she is? But we have wrought so worthy a gentleman to be her bridegroom.
Not proud? You have, but thankful that you have. Proud can I never be of what I hate, but thankful even for hate that is meant love.
How? Chop logic! What is this? Proud? I thank you, and I thank you not, and yet not proud? Mistress Minion, you thank me no thankings, nor proud me no prouds. Be fettle, your fine joints against Thursday next to go with past to St. Peter's Church, or I will drag you there on a hurdle thither. Out, you green sickness! Carry on out, you baggage, you tallow face!
Fie! What are you, mad? Good father, I beseech you on my knees, hear me with patience, but to speak a word.
Hang thee, young baggage, disobedient wretch! I tell thee what, get thee to church on Thursday, or never have to look me in the face. Speak not, reply not, do not answer me. Oh, my fingers itch. Wife, we scarce thought us blessed that God had lent us but this one, an only child. But now I see this one is one too much, and that we have a curse in having her. Out on her, Hilding!
God in heaven bless her! You ought to blame a lord to rate her so.
And why, my lady Wisdom? Hold your tongue. Good Prudence! Smatter with your gossips. Go!
I speak no treason.
Oh, God, ye goden!
May not one speak?
Peace, you mumbling fool, out of your gravity, or gossips bowl, for here we need it not.
Oh, you are too hot,
says Lady Capulet. God's bread! It makes me mad! Day and night and hour, tide and time, and work, play, alone, in company. Still, my care hath been to have her matched. Having now provided a gentleman of noble parentage, of fair demean, youthful and nobly trained, stuffed, as they say, with honorable parts, proportioned as one's thought would wish a man, and then to have a wretched, puling fool, a whining mammet in her fortune's tender, to answer, I am not wed, I cannot love, I'm too young, I pray you pardon me. But an you will not wed, I'll pardon you. Graze where you will, you shall not house with me. Oh, look to it, think on it, I do not use to jest. Thursday is near. Lay hand on heart and advise. An you be mine, I'll give you to my friend. An you be not, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. For by my soul I'll ne'er acknowledge thee, nor what is mine shall never do thee good. Trust to it, but think it. I'll not be forsworn. And he exits.
Oh, is there no pity sitting in the clouds that sees into the bottom of my grief? Says Juliet. Oh, sweet mother, cast me not away. Delay this marriage for a month, a week, or if you do not make the bridal bed in that dim monument where Tybalt lies. Talk not to me, for I'll not speak a word. Do as thou wilt, for I have done with thee. Oh, God. Oh, nurse, how shall this be prevented? My husband is on earth, my faith in heaven. How shall that faith return again to earth, unless that husband send it me from heaven by leaving earth? Comfort me, counsel me. Alack, alack, that heaven should practice such stratagems upon so soft a subject as myself. What sayest thou? What, is that not a word of joy? Some comfort? Nurse? Faith, here it is. Romeo's banished, and all the world to nothing. He dares ne'er come back to challenge you, or if he do, it must be by stealth. Then, since the case so stands as now it doth, I think it best you married with the county. Oh, he's a lovely gentleman. Romeo's a dish-clout to him. An eagle, madam, hath not so green, so quick, so fair an eye, as Paris hath. Beshrew my very heart, I think you're happy in the second match, for it excels your first. Or if it did not, your first is dead. Or 'twas good he were living here, and you no use of him. Speakest thou from the heart? And from my soul too, else beshrew them both. Amen. What? Well, thou hast comforted me marvellous much. Go in, and tell my lady I am gone, having displeased my father, to Lawrence's cell, to make confession and to be absolved. Oh, Mary, I will, and this is wisely done. Ancient damnation! Oh, most wicked fiend, is it more sin to wish me thus forsworn, or to dispraise my lord with that same tongue which she hath praised him with above compare so many 1,000 times? Go, counsellor, thou and my bosom henceforth shall be twain. To the friar, to know his remedy. If all else fail, myself have power to die. It's the end of Act III. And I gotta say, again, wow. Shakespeare, in his peak of his game, every act ends on this powerful note. You know, you get these scenes, you just, wow, that was a whirlwind of action right there. And definitely that's the case here. I'm going to take us all the way back to scene 4 to do a little commentary on that brief scene first. It is intriguing to me to see the character of Paris and his relationship with Lord Capulet, because Paris seems to want what's best for Juliet. He's a decent fellow. I'd put him probably in his mid-20s, but he's a decent fellow. And he wants to do what's best for Capulet and for Juliet and for everybody. He's not a bad guy. He's definitely wealthy, probably a handsome fellow too, because everybody says he is. So here's Lord Capulet thinking, I've got the perfect match for my daughter. And we have to keep in mind here, nobody knows about the marriage between Juliet and Romeo except for the nurse and Friar Lawrence. Everyone else, even Romeo's friends, think that they two are not an item. And it's only been a few days. I mean, you think about it, there was the
day of slaughter, then the night of the party, and they met there in the morning in the garden. Then in the next morning they were married, and then there was the death of Tybalt and the death of Mercutio, and Romeo's banished. And then that night Romeo sneaks into the chamber of Juliet and consummates the marriage. And now this is the morning. So that's one full day that we're dealing with here. Roughly 2 nights, one full day. So nobody knows Romeo and Juliet are an item. And Lord Capulet, seeing how much she's crying over Tybalt, thinks, oh, that's terrible that my daughter's in such a state. How can I cheer her up? How can I help her? Well, I could get her married so that she has a life to look forward to, and I'll get her married to a handsome young man who's a wealthy young man and a noble young man, and things should go well. And in this day and age, barring our modern objections to prearranged marriages, in this day and age of Romeo and Juliet, who could think of a better thing for a father to try to do for his daughter? Doing his best to ensure that his own daughter was happy. And here, they're agreeing, right? Wednesday is even too soon. So how about Thursday? And Paris says, of course, Thursday would be fine. So let's get married on Thursday. So on Thursday, they're planning to be married. And I suppose if you were to look at it this way, that means that this would probably be maybe a Saturday, perhaps, or a Sunday in the week calendar. Perhaps so, because he only says let's get married in a few days, and then Wednesday is too soon, so let's get married next Thursday. So I'm assuming this is maybe even on a Friday. Now, why is that significant to go into that kind of detail? Well, remember we're dealing with 2 nights here, and this is the second. This is the first full day, the second night. Yes, the first full day, second day in general, and then you have where we are now, which is the second full day. Okay, and if this second full day is on a Friday, right, then you're entering into a 3-day period here, right? This play takes place over 3-day period, and by the end of that 3-day period, you have the tragedy occurs. Is there another 3-day period that as Christians we are aware of, where at the end of those 3 days, comedy, if you will, happens? Is there another 3-day period where at the end of it there's tragedy, which is then turned into comedy? Well, obviously, the resurrection. It's the Holy Week, right? The days of Wednesday and then Maundy, Thursday, and then Good Friday. And here we are on Friday. And then the resurrection happens 3 days after that, right? And he's in the tomb for 3 days and he rises again. Is this coincidence on the part of Shakespeare? Maybe, but coincidence and Shakespeare don't normally go together. So it seems almost like he's making a parallel. This is not a story about comedy and salvation and resurrection. This is a story about damnation and the direct inversion of that triduum, the 3-day sequence. The direct inversion seems to be intentional, just as every other inversion in the play is as well. Because we've seen the inversion of masculine to feminine and feminine to masculine, and we've seen the inversion of words. So here's yet another inversion. Wow, wind's kicking up. It's been very blustery today. Lovely, but very blustery. So then in scene 5, right, scene 5 begins with this lovely little romance scene, the parting of Romeo and Juliet, and how parting is such sweet sorrow. But remember that that's going on at the same time that Daddy in another room in the house is setting up the happiness for his future daughter. It's as though Juliet is betraying her father within the house, and Daddy doesn't know about it at all. Poor Dad, right? Who's trying his best to do something to make his daughter happy. And did you catch during this whole scene the allusions to birds again? Talking about the nightingale, right? This is the nightingale, not the lark. The nightingale sings during the night. The lark is one of the birds that sounds in the morning. And they first say it's the nightingale, so stay a little longer. Let's linger together. And then it's the lark, which heralds morning, about 4 or 5 in the morning, right? All that bird imagery kind of harkens back to earlier in the play when we talked about bird imagery and we talked about Juliet being the kid with the bird on the string. So there's bird imagery throughout the play, which we can look at if we're so inclined, right? This is a little study tip for you, a future essay in case you want to write an essay on Romeo and Juliet. Bird imagery in Romeo and Juliet sounds like something an undergraduate would do. And then Juliet, who at first says, right, it's not the lark, it's the nightingale, then suddenly changes her mind, very suddenly. It is, high hence, be gone away. It is the lark that sings so out of tune. And she does so right after Romeo has said, oh, you're right, it's the nightingale. He thinks it's the lark at first, and he has to go, and then he says, I have more care to stay than will to go. I really want to stay with you. Come, death, and welcome. I defy death. I'm going to stay with Juliet because she wants me to. How is it, my soul? Let's talk. It is not day. Let's talk being a euphemism, by the way, for the younger members of the crowd. But Romeo, who's now convinced himself to stay, suddenly then Juliet flips and says, no, wait. It is the lark. You got to go. What do you make of that? I find that a little weird. Why is it that she at first says it's a lark, right? And you got to go, or she says it's the nightingale and not the lark, and Romeo says no, it's the lark. I got to go, and then she convinces him, and he's going to stay, and then she says no, it's the lark. You got to go. Well, you can read it a couple different ways. One way is that she's scared, and she gets suddenly scared, and she thinks, oh, he's going to die if he stays here, and that would be definitely in keeping with the idea that Juliet is a sweet young girl who loves Romeo and cares for his safety. But notice how she convinces him and draws him in and then flings him out again, like a kid with a bird on a string, right? And notice also how just when he's ready to come in and he says, let's talk, that's a euphemism again, remember? If you don't know what a euphemism is, you can look it up. If that's a euphemism, then the minute that he says, let's talk, because it's not day, that's when she says, no. You got to go. What? Juliet? Why would she do that? It strikes one as, in that instance, as not being an example of love, but the opposite. Someone who is using sexuality as a tool or as a useful necessity. But not somebody who is so in love that she's willing to defy death and stay with her beloved. So that's another reading of it. Then they have this little exchange in the next section where she says, oh, now I would they had changed voices too, right? The toad and the lark. Since arm from arm that voice doth us affray, hunting thee hence hunts up to the day. Okay. Oh, now be gone, more light and light it grows. There's that image of hunting things down. I think that's really an interesting image, that Romeo's the one who's now being hunted by the calls to mourning, the hunts up, right? So here it's an interesting metaphor again, that Romeo is not just a bird on a string. It's like he's the object of the hunt. And then Romeo says, more light and light, more dark and dark our woes. So as the day rises, as the light increases, their woes get worse, darker and darker, which is an inversion again. It's the person who is seeing the world not as providential, but as damnable. I remember once somebody saying that to the damned, the presence of the divine is the torture itself. The very torture is the presence of the divine. Dante makes that allusion as well, that those sinners in hell, their greatest torture is that God is omnipresent even in hell, and they don't want to see him. They want to be hidden. The great passage from Scripture, right, where Christ says, then on that day you will say, O mountains, fall upon us, and earth, hide us. That's sort of like this. This inversion is such that when the sun rises and the day begins, the personality that Romeo exhibits sees only darkness, and darker woes. Well, then the nurse comes in, And she calls to Juliet and says, "Oh, your mother's coming. Danger, 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 Will Robinson." And he has to go. Romeo does. And he goes down from the balcony or from the high point or whatever it is that in the stage. And he's down below, and she's addressing him down below. And so many great allusions here, so many great foreshadowings that occur. Juliet says, "I have an ill-divining soul. Methinks I see thee now, thou art below, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. Either my eyesight fails or thou looks pale." Yeah, he's already below her, dead. Inversion in more than one way, because if the masculine is associated with the sun, it should be up above. Instead, it's down below, and she's up above. But also inversion in that if they really were in love and they really were young, they'd be filled with life. But she sees him as dead already. He's already dead. Tisk task. And so he also says, "Adieu, adieu. I go." And then Lady Capulet comes in. Yes, the loving mother. And Lady Capulet is... I really sometimes wish I could play certain parts, because I would like to play Lady Capulet. I can't because, on the one hand, the male thing, and on the other, the beard, and on the other, because, I can't. But it's interesting to see how she comes in, opens the curtains, fluffs up the bed, tries to get Juliet to rise from the bed. And if the backstory is that Lady Capulet had a thing for Tybalt, there'd be this pain, this underlying, unspoken, unacknowledged agony, because she couldn't say anything about it. And so she would be, in some ways, putting it aside, suppressing it is what psychologists call it, suppressing some pain or horror or awfulness, because she knew she couldn't express it. And so she says, "Wilt thou wash him from his grave with tears, evermore weeping for your cousin's death? If thou couldst not make him live." Right? Stop crying. It's not going to bring him back. Almost like she's telling him herself that. I could see an actress like Annette Bening or somebody playing this role and just knocking it out of the park. Annette Bening was this in several roles. I think American Beauty was like that with Annette Bening. And there's this tightly wound, suppressed misery that she will not acknowledge. And so she puts on her makeup and she fluffs the bed and she gets out there and let's go. Not going to cry about it. No reason to. And then Juliet has this little exchange with her where Lady Capulet says, "I'm going to send somebody to find Romeo and poison him." And Juliet's playing along with it, right? And it's obvious that she's putting on a mask, that she's trying to say, I'd go ahead and I'd want to kill him. I want him dead too. But at the same time, there's that added thing of she doesn't really want him dead. She wants Romeo alive, very much so. But why? Is it through love? Or is it that she wants him around because she hasn't fulfilled her little plan yet? It's peculiar how, if she were truly in love with him and truly open, she'd say, "What? You're not going to poison him? I love that man." But she's not going to do that. She's duplicitous. She puts on a mask. Nice little 13-year-old girl. And Juliet says, then, in speaking to her mother, that Romeo should, upon receipt of the poison, soon sleep in quiet. Oh, how my heart abhors to hear him named and cannot come to him, to wreak the love I bear my cousin upon his body that hath slaughtered him. In the text, you'll see the text ends such that you could read this as, "Oh, how my heart abhors to hear him named and cannot come to him," because she wants to be near Romeo, right? But in the full line of it, "I cannot come to him to wreak the love I bore my cousin upon his body that hath slaughtered him." Right? Or you could read it a second way too. You could say, I can't stand the fact that whenever he's named, I can't be near him to wreak love upon him. It's kind of an innuendo, I suppose. And Lady Capulet says, find thou the means and I'll find the man to go poison him. And now here's some good news. And now for sports, right? The good news is that we've set you up to get married to County Paris next Thursday morn at St. Peter's Church. And you'll be a joyful bride. And again, under other conditions, that would be, wow, joyful bride. What a great idea. Thanks, Mom. And she would be grateful. But here, that's not what happens. Instead, she goes ballistic on her mom, just angry as anything. He shall not make me there a joyful bride. I wonder at this haste that I must wed ere he that should be husband comes to woo. Right? I wonder that you hurry to marry me off before I get wooed to somebody. Which the anger she plays off as, I'm getting mad because you haven't let me have the time to be able to woo somebody. I want to woo somebody. Spoiled brat in a way. But it's also anger because if she gets married to somebody else, she's now married to two husbands, which, as Groucho Marx says, that's bigamy, right? And she doesn't want to have that. She wants to be married to Romeo so she can, well, either so she can be with the one she really loves, if you read it one way, or so she can bring out Romeo and surprise her parents and really tick them off when she gets the chance to. Trying to keep this PG. And then she says, go to my father and tell him I will not marry yet, and when I do marry, it will be to Romeo, whom you know I hate. And she's already married to Romeo, so think about that. I'll marry Romeo, whom I hate. And if all went another way, she'd haul out Romeo and say, guess what? Yay! I married Romeo. And you hate him, don't you, Mom? I know you do. Well, Lord Capulet comes in, and I love this little exchange at first. If we see him as a doting father, it's this really kind of a doting scene that he has, right? Where he says, the air doth drizzle dew for my brother's son, Tybalt. It rains downright. Oh, how now, a conduit girl, what, still in tears, evermore showering? Gosh, you've got a lot of tears in your little body. He's just kind of ribbing her, teasing her, and it's a very affectionate, fatherly scene. Now, I think a lot of people have said that Lord Capulet is too hot-headed. He's too violent in his moods, and that he flips here in a minute. And that may be true. He may be this sort of manic-depressive type. But whoever is manic-depressive knows that this happens sometimes. You go out of your way to help somebody that you really do love and are affectionate to them, and then they throw it back in your face, and you flip. You get all angry. It is a thing that happens. So I would suggest that Lord Capulet is well in his rights to lose his temper here with Juliet, because Juliet says, "I am thankful that you have done this thing, right? I'm not very proud of saying this, but thankfully, even for hate that has meant love, I'm going to stand my ground. I don't want to get married." And then Lord Capulet just blusters, what are you saying? Chop logic, right? And just goes off on her. You green sickness, right? My fingers itch, because he wants to throttle her, itching to grab you by the throat and choke the life out of you. And then the nurse even barges in and says, "It's your fault too, Lord." And he turns, and here is one man surrounded by three women, maybe more, and he's just trying to, wife and daughter and nurse, and rah, 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 rah. Then wife says, "You're too hot. God's bread, it makes me mad," he says. This is what I do day and night. I work to try and help Juliet. And then she turns around the second I find a good man and a noble man and a young man and a wealthy man, and she turns around and says, "No thanks. What the hell kind of daughter do I have?" And yeah, he's very angry. And he even says, right, go and beg and starve and die in the street, because I'm not going to be forsworn. I promised you to him already, and I'm not going to go back on my word just because you are fickle. Again, I got to say, I'm with Lord Capulet on this, right? He may not be liked by some people, but I really kind of like the fella. And then Lady Capulet. At the end of that exchange, I find that Lady Capulet could say to Juliet, Juliet, we'll give you some time. You've got to come around. Or Juliet, you've got to see reason. Or Juliet, I totally understand. Just give it some time. Go out and have a couple pastries and some ice cream. You'll be fine. And that's what she could say. But she doesn't. And this is, again, it strikes at the root of the relationship between Lady Capulet and Juliet, right? And I think that Shakespeare is revealing to us little elements of this domestic tension in the Capulet household that really begins to make a case for why Juliet does what she does. Because after this bluster and Lord Capulet saying, I throw you out on the street, and Lady Capulet could have said any number of charitable things and could have said, oh, he doesn't mean it, dear. All will be well. I'll speak to him. She could have said all that. Instead, Juliet turns to her and says, mercy, Mom. Help me out, Mom. Please. And Lady Capulet says, don't talk to me. Right? I'm not going to speak a word to you. Go do whatever you want because I'm done with you. What kind of mother does that? That's awful. That's awful. I think that the kind of mother that might do that would be the kind of mother who is detached from her family, not invested in her family, doesn't like her daughter perhaps because her daughter is a rival of love for the husband. I think that a woman who does that might be a woman who herself is jaded or disappointed because the person that she wanted to be with, she can't be with. Who was that person? I think you can make a case it was Tybalt. And that Lady Capulet, now that Tybalt is dead, right, has to be with Lord Capulet. And she's going to suck it up and do it. But now Juliet, petulant and foolish and idiotic, I'm not going to deal with you. Shut up. I'm out. Whew. That's just cold. And because of that coldness, I mean, I don't think this is the first instance it's happened. Because of that coldness, couldn't one conceive that a young 13-year-old girl might want to find a way to stab at the heart of Mommy? I think perhaps. I think there's reason to suggest that Lady Capulet has made such a antagonistic relationship with her daughter that really we see the whole tragedy occurring because Juliet wants to get back at Mom. Okay, well, if that's the case, Juliet turns to the nurse because the nurse is actually more mother to Juliet than Lady Capulet. Nurse was the one that nursed her at an early age. Nurse was the one that shared all those childhood memories. Nurse is the one that's been the close bosom buddy all these years. Not just the servant, but the nurturing and helping and guiding woman in Juliet's life. She is the female figure that Juliet looks up to most. Lady Capulet is simply the biological mom of Juliet, and not very well liked, I think, by Juliet. Now, after she's cast her away, Juliet turns to the nurse and says, please, nurse, give me some good advice. Tell me what to do. What do I do here? Right? Oh, nurse, how shall this be prevented? How shall my dual marriage to two men be prevented? How shall my being married to a false man that my parents won't be prevented? My husband is on earth. My faith is in heaven. How shall that faith return again to earth? Unless that husband send it to me from heaven by leaving earth. Right? How on earth, how will I ever have faith in God? Right? Unless my husband should die and send my faith back to me after he dies. Really intriguing little line there. And she asks the nurse to comfort her and to counsel her with words of wisdom. And then he even throws in that, that heaven should practice stratagems upon so soft a subject as myself, like, God's out to get me. Another line we hear frequently from teenagers, right? But God's out to get me. Remember that Romeo had said a similar thing too, that heaven was basically against him. He was fortune's fool, but that God was out to get him. And so both Juliet and Romeo are thinking, God is out to get them, out to get me. Okay. But she has asked the nurse for some comfort. And here's the comfort. The nurse says, look, Romeo's dead for all intrinsic purposes. You can't get to him. His banishment means you'll never see him again. Now you can either stay married to him in secret and be miserable your entire life and cast out by your father and die on the streets. Or you can suck it up and get married to a nice, decent, noble, wealthy young man who will treat you well. I counsel that you do that and get married to that man. Paris. And there's no stage direction here for what happens next. But in the words themselves, there's enough indication of the reaction to that counsel. What do you think of that counsel? Is that wise counsel? It seems to me that the nurse is saying, here's the situation, and it's not good, but this is the best we can hope for. And immediately Juliet turns on the nurse and shuts down all feeling towards her. I find it one of the coldest betrayals, I think, in the whole play. Before, Juliet has been duplicitous towards the nurse, and she has complained about her, right? But here, I think she turns against her entirely because the nurse says, give up Romeo and marry Paris. And Juliet says, speakest thou from thy heart, right? Are you serious, right? That's how we would put it. Are you serious? The nurse says, yes, beshrew them both, right? I speak for my soul too. And if I don't, then forgive me for that. And Juliet says, amen. The nurse is like, what? So there's very little in terms of text, but the way the text works, it shows that not only does Juliet shut the nurse out, but the nurse realizes it, that she has been shut out from the heart of her little girl. This is her little girl. And Juliet has closed herself off completely at that one instance. And permanently, by the way, because from this point on, as she says, you will no longer be in my bosom. You will no longer be of one mind with me. And the nurse kind of takes it as, oh, good decision. I'll go tell your dad. If you notice in productions, sometimes they get this. They do in the Zeffirelli, which I really like. They get that the nurse says, okay, marry I will. This is wisely done. And you could say that's a happy response. But in the production, like with Zeffirelli, there's this moment with Juliet who moves away from her when she tries to touch Juliet. And the nurse realizes, I am cast out. I'm shut out from the heart of this little girl that I've raised from childhood. And right after she leaves, Juliet curses her. Ancient damnation, O most wicked fiend. Which again, if we're talking an innocent little 13-year-old Juliet, no. This would be like as soon as the nurse leaves and Juliet would say, damn you, curse you. And she does. She curses her and shuts her out completely. And the reason being is that she sided with Paris rather than Romeo. And she says, go from this point on, thou and my bosom shall henceforth be torn apart. And therefore I'm going to go to the friar and find out what he has to say. And the whole act ends with her saying, if all else fails, if all my other stratagems and plans fail, which means she has stratagems and plans, folks, if all my other stratagems and plans fail, at least I can kill myself. Not very romantic or happy, I gotta say. And that coldness and that shutting out of the nurse, to me, makes this, that's where the tragedy really is. Remember that in Sonnet 129, we had this idea that lust, unbridled lust, is duplicitous and treacherous and bloody, and that it cuts other people out from your own heart. And really, if we're looking at this as a play that's kind of about damnation, those that are damned by their own volition are isolated as well. Why? Because they have made a mortal thing into a substitute for the eternal. And when they shut out the eternal and make a mortal thing their god, the god of my idolatry, as Juliet says about Romeo, that's when they begin to shut everybody else out as well. And all the world, all that bright world becomes a dark world instead. And that's what we're seeing here at the end of Act 3. So we end on this sort of cliffhanger. What's going to happen? But we know by this point, like I said, after the death of Mercutio, you kind of know. We also know by this point that whatever happens, it's not going to be pretty. So join me tomorrow for more of this not prettiness as we hurtle towards the inevitable end of these two young star-crossed lovers. Thank you very much for being here with me today. It's always a pleasure, and I'll try and continue this tomorrow. And until then, I want to encourage you, if you haven't gotten the chance yet, to go to the Shakespeare 2020 project, Ian Desher's project. Really a lot of fun. And then also encourage you to check out podcasts. There's a lot of good podcasts out there, but one that I'm really enjoying is this Kevin Stroud's podcast, which is the History of the English Language podcast. Really good stuff. Good stuff. Great way to while away the time. And if you get the chance, do check out my Patreon page. I would certainly appreciate any contribution you can give, however small, and my family would appreciate it as well. And till we meet again, stay safe, stay healthy, go with God.